Lena. I help run people operations for a tech company called Community. They're a SaaS company, which basically means they're a software as a service company, and they're based out of Santa Monica, California. I'm here in Portland, and as a Portland native, I graduated from the Portland Public School System. I went to Kenton Elementary, I went to Ockley Green Middle School, Benson High School, and as a board member for the PWA and as a product of the Portland Public School System, I'm here to help share some of the expertise in how to land a job. I work in the people operations function, which is often known as human resources in a lot of companies. And human resources departments will often be the folks who assess resumes, help managers hire employees, and support employees once they come onto the company. So today we've helped prepared a presentation for you all on how to land a job, whether it's your first job, whether it's something that you're exploring, whether it's an internship or some sort of school training program. Often there's an application process. And so hopefully some of the tips and tricks and advice that we provide you today will help you land your dream job. So we'll be covering 4 things today. We will be discussing how to search for a job, completing job applications, both online and on paper, how to prepare your resume, and at the very end, we'll also provide interviewing tips. So to kick off your search, there are 3 main ways to search for a job. So first would be word of mouth. This means you're really just asking your friends, your family members, your community, neighbors if they know about job openings. Second would be places that you visit and you frequent. So, I understand that right now maybe the timing's off, especially with the pandemic and everything happening with COVID, but in a perfect world, you would be able to go into the shops, places that you enjoy and that you're interested in working in and ask them directly. So these could be gyms, local restaurants, movie theaters, stores, and just places you shop. Make sure you look for help wanted signs around the neighborhood, and also ask for applications or leave your resume if you don't see a now hiring or help wanted sign. I'd say small businesses and local shops often may not advertise that they're looking for a job in their windows. So you're always welcome, and you shouldn't be afraid of asking people directly. You can also look for jobs online. So you can look for open positions and roles on company websites and job boards. And job boards are websites like Indeed, Glassdoor, Craigslist, MaxList, LinkedIn. Speaking of LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a professional social media networking site. So you can also look for jobs on LinkedIn and other places like Facebook jobs, Twitter, Instagram, and industry-specific meetups. And also just follow companies that you want to work for on social media, whether that's on LinkedIn, whether that's on Facebook. A lot of companies tap into their social media network when they're hiring for jobs and post their openings directly onto those platforms. Now, in order to have a successful job application be reviewed, there are often tips and tricks that you can kind of just employ to help your application be seen and to maybe get it to the top of the list. So success in a job search means that you've submitted an application and a resume that gets attention. So to make your application stronger, I'd say you should probably look for keywords and job ads to let you know whether you have the skills and experience and whether it's the kind of work that you want to do. An example of this might be if you are looking to be a basketball coach referee for a summer league and you maybe have only had experience sitting or working in an ice cream shop. You're going to need to find some skills that would be important for a basketball referee in some of the existing roles that you've had. You can also sign up for alerts on job boards and company career websites. So that way, when they post a role, you're immediately one of the first people to know with an alert. And also tell everybody you know that you're looking and what you have to offer. You'd be surprised at how much word of mouth and person-to-person networking happens, even in the professional world, no matter what level of career you're at. Several people often get jobs just by word of mouth. And be persistent. I'd say follow up. Oftentimes, companies receive several, if not hundreds of applications sometimes for one open position, especially for internships, summer roles, when you have college students returning. And generally, lots of high school students are also looking for positions. So be persistent, follow up. Once you submit a job application, please call, email. I would suggest maybe weekly and ask about the status of your application. And if you aren't getting interviews, please be sure to keep applying for different jobs. It's a great strategy to have several applications in at once and have several interviews at once if you're so lucky. So then that way you're not necessarily putting all your eggs in one basket and hoping for one position in case it doesn't happen or it falls through. Now, in terms of job applications, there are two primary ways that you can fill out a formal application. One is from home or elsewhere, like an internet cafe, iPads, even cell phones. Job application boards are now mobile friendly. You can do it online at a kiosk at a device or a place where you're applying. So if, for example, if you're looking for a role at Target and you go in, they often have a little kiosk by customer service where you can browse open roles and apply for them in person. Many large companies like Target and even other chains actually encourage you to apply online. That way, they have a dedicated recruiter often on their recruiter team to be able to review your application and flag it for the hiring manager. Oftentimes, when a hiring manager gets a paper application in person, sometimes it could be lost, shuffled among other applications, or really just put off, have a moment to be able to review them. Small independent places such as restaurants, convenience stores, youth sports leagues probably are using a paper application system. So that might be one exception to the rule where you want to be diligent in making sure that you submit a paper application directly to the company. You might also be asked to submit a resume, which we'll cover in just a moment. Okay, so online job applications. What we have up right here on the slide is an example of what an online job application will look like for the company Pizza Hut. A couple things that we're going to be covering is applicant tracking systems, essay questions, and submitting these. So a lot of these applications, like I mentioned previously, are all via a mobile app. So whether you're sitting at home on a computer or on your phone, you can submit your info just the same. So an applicant tracking system is basically an online platform that a company uses to capture all the data in an application, be able to review it in one place, and be able to compare applicants applying for the same role. Applicant tracking systems parse through your application based on keywords search, which then match to the job description for the role in which you're applying for. The system will kick out any applications that don't match the minimum requirements. The applicant tracking system sometimes will also rate you. So if there are 5 people applying for a job and your keywords or your experience don't necessarily match up completely to the job, it might rank you somewhere on the bottom of the list. It also will allow you to upload attachments. So your resume here would be something that you would upload on an online application. If they ask for your GPA, proof of something. So for example, if you have a CPR certification and the job requires it, it might also ask you to upload that certificate directly onto your application. With applications and uploading attachments, a couple things to be aware of are fonts that might show up funky, bullet points that end up going out of whack when you submit an application and uploading a resume, and also your attachment size being too large for the system. In that case, I would recommend whenever you submit your application, if it's in like a doc format, you capture that in a PDF and load it. You also might be asked to say questions. Remember, just as any assignment you would ever submit at school, spelling and grammar matters. This is important to companies. Read your answers before clicking next or submitting. In fact, I also recommend that you work in a separate document and maybe answer and edit those questions offline, like in the Notes tab or in Microsoft Word. And then when you're comfortable with spelling and grammar and edits, you can just copy and paste that into the answer field. And if you need a moment, often online job applications will allow you to pause or save your application. So you can take a step back, maybe have some review your answers, feel comfortable with the answers that you're providing to these essay questions, and then upload them when you're ready. Make sure you hit submit at the end as well. If you don't, your application will stay in a pause or suspended mode. If you complete the online application at a kiosk or other device at a work site, remember to dress appropriately. Don't show up with any stained clothing, anything offensive on your clothing, no flip-flops or shorts, no heavy fragrances. It's always a good practice to bring your resume on a thumb drive should you have them, so then you can either email the hiring manager or print your forms out, and be completely honest in all your questions. I say that because oftentimes I know you're so close to meeting all the minimum requirements for a job, but one or two minor details might not completely match. If you lie on a job application and the company or your manager finds out, you'll probably be barred or banned from being able to apply at that company again, and you will certainly be disqualified for the job that you're looking to apply for. So while it's unlikely that you'll be applying for a job in person right now, here are some tips for when the pandemic happens to be letting up a bit. So you can fill out an application at the company or later and come back. If you're filling it out there, you have all the info that you'll need about prior employment, achievements, GPA, references. Timing also matters. Avoid applying during the busiest times of day. For example, like a restaurant or a cafe, maybe rush hour in the morning when folks are getting their coffee or a breakfast sandwich, noon to 2 when folks are eating lunch, and 5 to 8 when they have a lunch or a dinner rush. Avoid being in a hurry in case you're asked on the spot interview. So definitely don't leave yourself just 10 minutes in case the hiring manager comes by and wants to chat. And be prepared for the on-site interview just in case someone has the time to chat with you then. So dress as if you'll have the interview. Be polite with the people that you interact with, regardless of if they're the hiring manager or not. This person might already be an employee, and they might have an opinion or a recommendation for you if they have a positive interaction. Ask to speak to the manager when you turn in your completed application, but understand also that a manager just might not be able to speak to you at the moment. And always be sure to bring a paper copy of your resume. On the topic of resumes, there are a few important components that all resumes have. One, a header. So as you see here, we have Sam Smith, who's looking for a customer service position. This helps the hiring manager be able to understand what your name is, your contact information, and exactly what roles you might be best suited for. Make sure your email address is appropriate. Make sure it's professional. So for example, if your name is Sam Smith, you should probably use something that's like sam.smith or samsmith at gmail.com. Definitely limit the use of special characters, numbers, nicknames, anything that doesn't come off professional. Make sure your voicemail is also set up. If you're providing your phone number and you're busy and a hiring manager leaves a message for you, definitely have a professional and basic greeting. Something like, "You've reached Sam Smith, unavailable at the moment. Please leave a message." Make sure your profile is objective and or knowledge, skills, and abilities focused. Examples would be if you speak any languages besides English, whether you attended a coding camp and you know JavaScript, whether you have leadership skills like being able to lead volunteer groups or at school, after school groups, and definitely pay attention to detail. Think about the things that you're good at and the things accomplished, and make sure you share those on your resume. Your experience and relevant experience at that is also important. You want to be able to list your experience chronologically, which means from most recent to the oldest. You're going to have your most recent experience first. Sam has Target listed, and then beneath that, he has previous experience at Burgerville. You're also going to be talking about your education. So share that you're a current high school student or potentially a college student. Be able to share your GPA if you're proud and impressed and feel accomplished with that. Definitely any student groups that you're in. And also be sure to make sure that you have like the certifications that we mentioned earlier, CPR, food handlers card, anything relevant or just, I guess, important for the role that you're applying for, be able to list that and speak to it clearly on your resume. Resume hints. So if you're doing an online application, it's probably best to avoid things like having bold font, underlines, italics. Sometimes when you're matching that to an application system, or if you're into a PDF, a lot of times that formatting can get funky. And there's so many different systems in which people use. So between a Mac and a PC, a person's viewing capability or the apps that they have on their machine, it could look different every time they pull it up. So for the resume, you probably want to use the same font throughout the resume. You want to use an easy to read font, 12 point, something standard even like Times or Arial, 1-inch margins from each side. So margins are just a little space, kind of like the bowling alley bumpers on the side. Recommended and best practice, especially for people at your stage in your professional journeys, is probably 1 page. You don't want to be too lengthy and list every single detail. The shorter the better, so that a recruiter or a hiring manager can be able to get the information they need in short format. Use bullet points instead of paragraphs. Definitely use spell check. And if you have someone, it wouldn't hurt to ask them to help proofread. Sometimes when you're looking at a document for a long time, let's say an hour or two, the things that your brain will focus on the document are things that you might have trouble with, but it's easy to overlook a spelling error or an apostrophe error somewhere else on the document. Also, avoid bold, underline, and italics. I know we mentioned that a little earlier, but please, please, please do that. Something to help you while you're creating a resume is to think about the STAR method, which means situation, action, and result. It's basically a way of telling a story. So it can be tough to really brag about yourself and think about accomplishments on your resume. So using the STAR method can get to the meat of your experience and why you're a fit for the role in a very direct and easy to read way. So the STAR method first would be your situation. So think of a situation that demonstrates your knowledge, skills, or abilities, whether it's camp, outdoor school, a youth group. That can be translated to something like leadership ability, management ability, organization, even project management, depending on if you're doing something based around an activity. Describe the task that had to be done to resolve the situation. Think about what action happened. So what actions did you take to complete the task? And what was the result? What was the outcome? I want to be really sure to call out on the result that it's actually okay to not necessarily have a successful result or outcome based on a situation or a project that you might be talking about. What's really important is for your hiring manager to be able to understand how you approach the situation, some of the tactics that you used, what action you took, and the result. You can also use the STAR method on resumes and for help developing some interviewing answers that you might encounter as part of the interviewing process. Now, should you land an interview tip, or excuse me, an interview, here's some tips to help you get through that conversation and to be prepared for some of the questions that they might ask you. So first, bring your resume just in case the hiring manager might have problems that morning printing or pulling your document up. Bring a writing pad and a pen. This shows that you're invested and that you're taking notes because you're interested in the role. Be positive, honest, focused. Listen. Be aware of body language. Don't forget to smile and ask appropriate questions. So as you're going through the interview, definitely, those are kind of just some of the high level tips. So be aware of the pace and the volume of your voice. If you use your hands to talk a lot, that could be distracting. If you have a really loud voice or if you're speaking fast because you're nervous, usually the hiring manager or person interviewing you can pick up on that. Definitely don't drift off on topics. If you talk about a project and you start drifting off on talking about how great of an experience it was, and you maybe bring up a story about something that was funny to you, that's likely unrelated to the actual interview and the skills that you're being interviewed and marked for. So definitely try not to drift off topic there. And definitely there's a difference between personal and professional. So, you can definitely talk about using babysitting as an experience, but definitely talk as being a sign of responsibility versus you simply just helping a neighbor or family friend out. Another thing is it is not okay to talk negatively about a boss, former employer whatsoever, even if you think that you were let go for bad reasons or they treated you unfairly. Definitely don't bring that up in the interview. If for some reason you need to take a moment to craft an answer or you didn't hear the question, please just say something like, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that question. Would you mind restating it? That just shows that you're actively listening and that you want to answer as they've asked versus you just making something up on the fly. Examples of good questions might be asking the interviewer. Remember, it's a two-way street. The hiring manager is interviewing you and you're also interviewing the company to see if this actually might be a fit for you. So at the end of your interview, some questions that you might ask to impress the hiring manager would be, tell me about your culture. Walk me through a typical day or shift for this position. What's the training process for new hires? What's the pay range for this role? You could also ask ask them to confirm if you already know what the pay requirement is. On the flip side, some bad questions to ask in your interview would be, how soon could I get a raise after starting? How fast could I get promoted? How much sick time do I get? Um, will I be able to have weekends off? Those types of things definitely make the hiring manager a red flag. Also, be sure, I cannot emphasize this enough, please, please, please turn your phone off or put it to do not disturb. Um, there's nothing more unprofessional than having your phone go off in the middle of an interview. You can take notes if you have permission from the hiring manager or the interviewer, but please otherwise be silent, be an active listener, and answer questions when asked. Typically in this part of the presentation, there's a Q&A session. Unfortunately, because this is pre-recorded and because we're obviously in a pandemic right now, we won't be able to hold a Q&A session. However, if you do have questions, any portion of this presentation, the topics that we covered, or about interviewing in general, please reach out to me directly. I can be found on LinkedIn. You can just search my name, Lena Battan. The last name is Battan. You can message me there and I'm happy to connect with you. You're also welcome to connect with someone at the PWA who will be able to answer your questions. You with someone who might have relevant experience in an industry in which you're applying for a job or an internship, or connect with me directly. Thank you so much for allowing me to share some tips and tricks with you. As someone who works in the human resources, I absolutely want to be able to share some of the insights and some of the helpful advice that I've received over the years. And I absolutely am here to support you on your journeys. And please reach out if you have, again, any questions at all. Thanks so much.